Welcome to Salute Your Sports. I think it's week 16. Kamenenchev, Tom Castleman, Drew Brackett, getting ready for an exciting show here. We're going to break down the AFC and NFC championships. We'll save our Super Bowl previews for next week, but we'll talk NFL offseason news as well as some of our favorite Super Bowl memories, a little college hoops in the show, and much more. Guys, you looking forward to today's show?
Absolutely, with a lot of perhaps quarterback news on the horizon in the NFL, and looking forward to locks of the week, some uncharted territory perhaps. So definitely a lot of exciting things going on.
Yeah, that's a great tease. I agree. Uncharted territory for locks of the week. Super Bowl's next weekend, so we won't talk about that too much. But yeah, the Super Bowl memory should be a good one.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Historic locks of the week. Well, a very good one. After a string of bad ones, a very good one for the whole team. But getting into what we witnessed this past weekend, let's start with the NFC Championship. The Buccaneers beating the Packers 31-26. Tom Brady making it to his 10th Super Bowl. Guys, first impressions of that crazy and exciting game that we witnessed.
Well, my first impression is that we saw the exact style of gameplay that the Buccaneers are going to need to have going into this game against Kansas City for the Super Bowl. We saw Tom Brady be, in the first half, really, really good. In the second half, he showed every bit of his 43 years of age. But what we also saw was decent running game, really solid trench play, which is my personal favorite thing. And really good defensive line where Jason Pierre-Paul was able to get after Aaron Rodgers a little bit, Shaq Barrett able to do the same. Vita Vea, their big defensive tackle in the middle, kind of gumming up the run game a little bit. So what we saw was, it's not all on the quarterback in Tampa. It hasn't been all year, and they're all going to have to come to play. So that was my impression coming out of the game, at least first blush.
Yeah, the activation of Vita Vea, the former Washington Husky, that was big time for the Bucs, and he'll be big in the Super Bowl. But really, the Packers just didn't take advantage of the Tom Brady turnovers. It just seemed like every time he threw an interception, the Packers would go three and out. But the Bucs defense, with timely three and outs late in the game, and as I mentioned, after those Brady turnovers. So, Tom Brady did what he needed to do, and then the defense just kind of finished the game.
Yeah, my first impression of the game is the game really changed at the end of the first half. You had Tampa Bay leading 14-10, Green Bay approaching midfield, probably going in for a field goal, if not a touchdown to end the half. Worst case, they punt. Buccaneers probably are out of time, and it's 14-10 Tampa, or it's 14-13, or maybe even 17-14 Green Bay. Instead, what did we see? A lucky break for a Tom Brady team. Buccaneers guy interferes with the Packers receiver. It's not called. He picks it off, and then Brady throws it deep. Should have been intercepted. He wasn't intercepted. And then on 4th and 3, the Bucs go for it, get a first down, and then they air it out deep, almost the last play of the half, second to last play or something like that. They get the touchdown. They go up 21-10 at the half. That, to me, is where the game changed in the last 2 minutes of the first half, and it was symbolic of the game. The Buccaneers got the breaks, and they were aggressive, whereas Green Bay was not aggressive. Tampa Bay went for that fourth down. They got the fourth down, then they got the touchdown. Meanwhile, we had the Packers just over 2 minutes left, down 8. They kick a field goal to get within 5. The coach said, LaFleur said, I've got my 3 timeouts and the 2-minute warning. I've got 4 timeouts left. He bet on his defense stopping Tampa Bay. It didn't work. He didn't trust his MVP quarterback to get him the 4th and goal conversion and the 2-point conversion to tie the game. Guys, was this simply a tough decision gone wrong, or was this really one of the all-time worst playoff calls we've seen? Because I thought it was pretty bad.
Yeah, I don't know if it goes to the extent of all-time worst. I'm going to say it's somewhere in the middle. It was a poor decision. I mean, if you look at it from a logical or even an analytical standpoint, going for the 3 points there doesn't really change what you need. If you're between, they were sitting there at 8 points. If you go for it and you get the touchdown, but say you don't get the 2-point conversion, all you need to do is play good defense or try to get an onside kick, and then you just need a field goal to win the game. Kicking the field goal there still means you need the touchdown, which is difficult to get. And given where you are in the field, they were somewhere between the 5 and the 10-yard line, I believe. Really just like a puzzling decision as to why Matt LaFleur decided to do that. But yeah, you absolutely have to try to trust your team, which has been really, really good in the red zone all year long. I think the one minor quibble is, maybe Aaron Rodgers could have run it on that crucial 3rd down to pick up an extra yard or 2. I don't think he scores on that, but I mean, they also could have had it earlier in that sequence, a pass to Allen Lazard. Wasn't even looking for the ball. It was on an RPO. He didn't think that the pass play was on. He thought it was going to be more of a run play. I mean, that right there, you said the look on Aaron Rodgers' face. That was the missed opportunity there. I think it was 1st, maybe 2nd down. That was the crucial play that really determined the end of the game.
Yeah, you mentioned the Aaron Rodgers scramble, and that was on 3rd down. And I remember saying, I guess, he didn't try to run it, so they're just going to kick the field goal here. Because in my mind, if he tries to run it, pick up 2 or 3 yards, you make it a 4th and reasonable. But at the same token, I was surprised that the Packers elected to kick the field goal. They almost got the stop and got the ball back. But 4th and goal on the 8, down 8, 3 timeouts. You have the 2-minute warning, I know, but I'd say the analytics say go for it, because no matter the decision, you still need a touchdown. Even if you get the 3 points, you need a touchdown. And if you go for it, well, obviously you need the touchdown to tie it. So, yeah, I questioned the decision, but that 3rd down play was interesting because when Rodgers just kind of threw it away or did what he did, I'm like, why didn't he run it 2 yards to make it a 4th and 6 instead of a 4th and 8? It's more manageable to pick up 6 than 8, right?
Yeah. And also a quick point, Common, you mentioned the whole bit about, trusting the defense. Why wouldn't you put your defense in a more advantageous position going for it, where you're now pinning the Buccaneers? Even if you don't get it, you're still pinning the Buccaneers behind the 10-yard line, giving your defense a good chance to put a lot of pressure. And then, like you said, they still have 2-minute warning and the 3 timeouts. So all in all, just a really puzzling decision.
Yeah, that's one other thing. What had to happen in that situation? By the way, I believe in the post-game press conference, Aaron Rodgers said that he was not aware that they were planning on kicking the field goal had they not gotten it on the first 3 downs. So that shows you the coach and the quarterback not on the same page. He also made phantom comments and remarks about maybe not coming back. I don't know if that's going to happen. But I'll tell you this, it made 0 sense just because you guys have kind of hit on everything. But honestly, part of it is it's the National Football League. You win with your offense. I mean, how often do we see game on the line, like, offense needs to convert to get the 1st down? A lot of times we see the conversion. It's the teams who are aggressive. We saw the Chiefs do it against the Browns. They were aggressive and they got it. They did that earlier this year in a game against the Bucs also. You've got your MVP quarterback. You have to go for it. And the defense, quite frankly, Tom Brady made some really bad passes that he just threw them to Green Bay. You take away those interceptions, certainly Green Bay gets credit for those, but the defense really wasn't doing a great job of stopping Tampa Bay. I would more see it if, you had the number 1 ranked defense and they were playing great, okay, maybe. But you look at Green Bay, their defense is average, a little bit above average, but they're certainly not a great defense. They weren't playing great. I mean, they were better the second half, but I think in that situation, you have to trust your MVP. And as you put it, worst case, they don't get it, then their defense, it doesn't change. They still need a touchdown and a 2-point play. To me, it was one of the all-time puzzling decisions just because we compare it to a play like the Russell Wilson interception on the 1-yard line instead of Marshawn Lynch. Well, Russell Wilson does not throw a lot of interceptions. The likelihood of him throwing an interception was pretty unlikely. Whereas you take a look at the likelihood of your defense stopping Tampa Bay from getting one first down. I mean, if you were a betting man, I would bet on the Bucs offense being slightly more likely to get a first down as opposed not to. The other issue is, even if you stop them, you get the ball back, you're getting the ball essentially in your own territory with about a minute and a half at the most, no timeouts. You got to go 70 yards down the field basically to get a touchdown, as opposed to where you're on the 8-yard line, one play. Where do you have a better chance with your offense? I would say one play to get 8 yards is much more likely than going 70 yards in just over a minute, personally. So I thought there was really no explanation for it, and I thought it was a horrendous call by Coach LaFleur there for the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, and you make an excellent point with in bringing up that infamous Seattle Seahawks decision. That was execution based. I mean, if Russell Wilson connects on that pass, if Malcolm Butler doesn't jump the route, we're certainly not talking about that decision at all. We actually might be talking about the other way. If we're going from a process-based standpoint, I'm actually coming around to thinking this might be more egregious than I initially thought it was, because as we're talking about it, there really isn't a great logical solution to, there's no reason that was like a logical decision to reach as being the best move. Basically, it was, do we want to lose by 5 or maybe risk losing by 8? To put that a little bit more cynically, I suppose it looks better that you lost by 5, but you still lost when you had an opportunity to win. So I'm coming around. Maybe that moves up higher on the list of playoff mistakes.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up the Seahawks game, the Super Bowl, and I agree with Pete Carroll on that one. You know, it's okay to throw the ball in that situation. I understand what he was doing. He was just trying to, I think the clock was running, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if they had a timeout, and I think he was just trying to, throw it real quick. It'll be an incompletion. It'll set up a Marshawn run. Like, he did not expect Russell Wilson to throw a pick. But anyway, I think it was the wrong decision to kick a field goal there, and I don't know. I don't know if it was just not trusting Aaron Rodgers or trusting your defense too much. I'm not even sure that the Packers had forced a 3-and-out that entire game. Don't quote me on that, but the defense was not playing well.
No. They just got turnovers, and Tom Brady's not going to throw it deep in that situation, too. So, like, those turnovers earlier was him trying to make a play. He's not going to try to make a play, up 5 with under 2 minutes to go. So, yeah, I think we're all on the same page. It was a very, very poor decision that made 0 sense. But on the other side, guys, I mean, Tom Brady gets to his 10th Super Bowl, but, we'll talk about how impressive is that. But also, let me ask you guys this. I kind of called this game. I called Tom Brady getting some lucky plays resulting in a Buccaneers win. Did we feel that Tom Brady, was I perhaps right, that Tom Brady got a lot of luck in this game? Because I actually think Aaron Rodgers was the better quarterback on the field during that game, hands down.
Well, sure. Just because he's the better quarterback doesn't mean he's, just because he's the worst quarterback in that game doesn't mean he's lucky. I don't know if he's that lucky. He did have 3 picks against the Packers, but give the guy credit. He was only sacked 1 time, so even if he was under pressure, he made good decisions. Now, granted, you can say the offensive line played well. Well, I think they only ran for 60, well, maybe 70-something yards. It wasn't like they had all control running the football.
You can't say that he made good decisions if you had 3 interceptions. I mean, all of them were also pretty bad decisions. It wasn't like tipped balls. I mean, there was one. The last one was, I guess, tipped by his receiver. It was a little bit of an overthrow.
I'm not saying he made all good decisions, but the fact of the matter is he only got sacked 1 time. Aaron Rodgers got sacked 5 times, and most of them were very, very crucial, right? And Brady made the plays when he needed to, and he helped his team win. I don't know if that's lucky. That's just maybe a game manager.
Well, I don't see how you can be a game manager and throw interceptions. Also, a lot of times the quarterback, Aaron Rodgers had pressure in his face. He got sacked 5 times, but he also escaped a few times. I mean, you look at Aaron Rodgers, he had over 300 yards 3 touchdowns and 1 interception, which shouldn't have been an interception because his guy was interfered with. Meanwhile, you look at Tom Brady, like you turn the ball over, you lose. But what happened? When he turned the ball over, the Packers didn't convert him to any points. The Packers had guys who fumbled. The Packers had all sorts of, really poor plays, and Brady had a lot of fortune in that game. I mean, he's now 3-1 in his career when he throws 3 interceptions in the playoffs. Can you imagine? 3-1 in his career throwing 3 interceptions. If that's not fortunate, I don't know what is. He's a great player. He's had a lot of great games, but it's undeniable that he continues to get a lot of breaks in the playoffs.
Yes, but the way you're perceiving the word lucky is that he's not as good. It's like, well, just because you're lucky doesn't mean you're not good.
I didn't say he's not good, but I'm saying that those 3 interceptions resulted in nothing. And I know part of it is the other team didn't capitalize, but he also had an interception dropped, like I spoke about earlier, that sequence at the end of the first half. He was fortunate that the refs missed the pass interference call that set up a Packers touchdown. He was fortunate that the Packers dropped an interception and then his team got a touchdown 2 plays later. There were a few really lucky, typical plays Brady gets. Did he play bad for the entire game? No, he's still a great quarterback. But in a close playoff game, when you throw 3 interceptions, 2 of them which are completely your fault, you did make mistakes. And he had a decent amount of yards, but overall, he wasn't the better quarterback, and I didn't feel that the Buccaneers were per se the more dominant team, but they got the job done because they got a few small breaks to go their way.
Well, I mean, football is the ultimate team sport because this isn't like basketball where you have the same 5 guys that coordinate to put up points on offense and defense. This is a game where you have to rely on other people on your team to do their jobs in order to be successful. So I think a lot of what can be kind of perceived as luck is just other guys doing their jobs. Like, yes, Tom Brady throws an interception. It's not luck that the defense then forces a 3 and out. That's just the defense doing their job. I think that when you break it down to, more of the chance plays, I don't think that Tom Brady gets, considerably more or less than other people. I think he gets more magnification because he's going to his 10th Super Bowl. He's been in 14 conference championship games. There's just a larger sample size for us to see those things, for those to be magnified. I mean, if you look at other great quarterbacks, you could say that they caught some luck too. Was it luck that Peyton Manning won a Super Bowl in Denver because he had a great defense even though he was nowhere near the top of his game? Was it luck that he won a Super Bowl against the Bears because the Bears had a couple injuries on defense and a blown coverage? Where does the line, start and stop with, luck versus other people doing their jobs? I agree Tom Brady does get lucky. You can't go to 10 Super Bowls and win 14 conference championships without being lucky, but you also don't get that many opportunities without being really, really good. So I think the effect of luck is a better storyline than it is actual, mathematical significance, I think.
I've never once said that Tom Brady isn't good. He's obviously great. My saying is I've been watching these games for years, and it is factually true that certain players get more luck than others. I'm sure every player has had some luck go their way and some luck go against them. It's not like everything is going to always go your way or go against you. But on average, Tom Brady has tended to have more luck. And also, in general, compared to the other all-time great quarterbacks, just in general, a better team. He's always had a better team. He's always had to do less. And I broke down the stats, 15th all-time in playoff passer rating going into this last weekend, probably gone down. Basically, about 40% of his playoff games, he's been fairly average, and his team has won anyways. Whereas you have a guy like Aaron Rodgers who essentially just played a great football game, and his team lost anyways. So part of it isn't just luck. Part of it is that Brady just happens to have great teams. Now, I do think it's impressive. This Super Bowl run is probably more impressive than any of the rest in the sense in the regular season they had 40 touchdown passes. He went to a new team. He has to get some credit for the culture. So it is impressive he's on to his 10th Super Bowl. But you look at the last 2 playoff wins, I would say his teammates carried the load as opposed to Brady.
Well, that's fair. I mean, the man's 43 years old, and like no Super Bowl team is really truly dominant on only one side of the ball. Every team that's won a Super Bowl has been at least competent on both sides. If you look at I know it's about a couple decades ago, but Tampa Bay Buccaneers, when they won the Baltimore Ravens, they won with great defense and then a passable offense. And in this case, like everybody always has to have a good team around them to win the Super Bowl. And yeah, he's been on a lot of those teams, but he's also driven a lot of those teams. So again, that's where I kind of think that, the line between luck and other people just doing their jobs kind of gets a little bit blurred, and he's seen as more fortunate than he actually is.
That's fair. On the other side, though, I'll say this: Aaron Rodgers, now I believe he's like 1-4 or 1-5 in NFC title games. He did play a pretty good game: 33 of 48, 346 yards, 3 touchdowns, the 1 interception coming on a bad call. He did take 5 sacks, but again, I watched the game. That really wasn't his fault. He was pressured constantly. Do we think that there's something to Rodgers not delivering in these NFC title games, only having played in 1 Super Bowl, only having won 1 Super Bowl? Is this more of an Aaron Rodgers clutch problem, or is this more of a team problem for Green Bay? I mean, why is Green Bay not making the Super Bowl?
They're not making the Super Bowl because they don't have a good enough team around Aaron Rodgers. A problem that he's had for a lot of his career, he's been so good that he's been relied upon to kind of paper over some of the other deficiencies on the team. I mean, we see this a lot in the NFL. We know that, quarterback is pretty much and arguably the most important position in any team sport, and yet not enough franchises, not enough teams do a good enough job building a supporting cast around it. Common, you're famous for saying, Colts are never going to win with Andrew Luck. Well, that's because they put a lot of pressure on Andrew Luck to carry the team, to paper over the fact that they did give him a good offensive line. Keep it going back to Aaron Rodgers. He's thrown a handful of touchdown passes to a first-round draft pick in his career, and I believe that most, if not all of them, are to Mercedes Lewis, who is certainly on the downside of his career as opposed to being at the top end of his career. So I think with the Packers, it's simply been a matter of when Mike McCarthy was the coach, it was Aaron Rodgers make a great play as opposed to actually doing things to scheme receivers open for him. It was just individual talent beat, an opposing defense. And then their front office hasn't really surrounded him with great talent. They could have gotten him a really good wide receiver, for example, instead of going with Jordan Love, a quarterback of the future. So I think that it's not on him in this team game scenario. It's that it's the inverse of Tom Brady, that his franchise has not done a good enough job surrounding him with talent, and that, arguably the most talented quarterback, in NFL history. Certainly Patrick Mahomes is about to overtake him for that, I think, given a little more longevity. But you look at just the combination of everything he brings to the table, it's hard to say that it's his fault.
Yeah, I agree, Tom. And in this last game against the Bucs, the offensive line wasn't healthy. I think they lost David Bakhtiari, whatever his name is, a few weeks ago. And then like a week ago, somebody else got hurt on that offensive line. And, he got sacked 5 times against the Bucs. And the Packers had just 67 yards on the ground. So they were playing from behind most of this game. And, I don't think it's Aaron Rodgers' fault. He played a great game. It's just there's just not enough around him on the offensive side of the football to really win.
Yeah, I mean, you take a look at some of these NFC title game losses he's had. 2019, 31 of 39, 326 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. You had another one against the Atlanta Falcons. He had 287 yards, 3 touchdowns, only 1 pick. They lost 44-21. This last year, 37-20 against San Francisco, 31-26 against Tampa Bay. A lot of these games, Aaron Rodgers has given his team a chance to win, but his defense has let him down. And I agree with you guys. I think part of it is, that his team isn't simply quite good enough. He kind of makes them look a little bit better than they are. I do think Davante Adams is a fantastic player, but he doesn't necessarily have like a second slam dunk option consistently, and the defense isn't very good. And the Packers have been weird in that they're pretty good at drafting second, third, fourth round type talent, but they seem to, on the first round, either miss or get a good first rounder on defense. The fact that they haven't been able to go out there and get Aaron Rodgers, a first round superstar on offense, is a problem, and that Jordan Love decision was pretty bad given the fact that contract Castleman, I'm talking off the top of my head, but I think Aaron Rodgers has like 3 to 4 years left on his contract, 3 years, and we're seeing him, this year he played his best ball. They couldn't have predicted he'd be quite this great, but he's still been very good the last few years, and we see quarterbacks play into their 40s now at a very high level. I don't necessarily think he's on his, last year or two for them to draft Love. I think that draft pick could have been used to potentially make a small difference in what was a close game in the NFC Championship game. So this game, to me, again, is not on Aaron Rodgers. Neither is their poor record in these NFC title games, which, by the way, this was the first time they got him one at home, too. Another thing to consider. But on the other side, the Chiefs rolled the Bills, 38-24, guys. What did you think of the AFC Championship game?
My first impression is that the Buffalo Bills were a little too timid for the moment. It's a young team. It's an up-and-coming team. And they looked like a team that, while very talented, was getting their first taste of really, really big action and really, really big pressure. And I think going into Arrowhead Stadium, while, not full capacity, obviously, because of COVID, still can get pretty raucous in there, pretty noisy. I think that's the thing that stood out to me from Buffalo's point of view, is that they just seemed not quite ready for the moment. Something that if they're back in the future, I think this will serve them well, but we'll certainly have to wait and see on that.
Yeah, simply, the Chiefs dominated. The Bills ran out of steam. I agree. I'm just not sure they were ready for the moment. And, Patrick Mahomes and this Chiefs team, they've been there. And Mahomes, performed well, 29 of 38, 325 yards, 3 touchdowns. And the Bills defense just could not keep up with Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce. And the Chiefs just completely dominated in the second quarter and just controlled the rest of the game.
Yeah, my first impression, number one, is that Patrick Mahomes looked healthy, which is an incredible sign for the Chiefs. And if you look healthy this week, that concussion will completely, if there was anything left of it, it'll completely be gone in 2 weeks. That turf toe, if there's anything there, which I don't know that there was a lot, that'll be pretty good in 2 weeks. So the takeaway that I got, we have Mahomes' injury questions going in. He delivered. He was great. Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, they did what we've seen the last 3 years. I mean, that's what those guys do. To me, it's just incredible because you look at Mahomes, he's the youngest quarterback to play in his second Super Bowl. It's very impressive. He's yet to lose in 3 years as a starter. He's never lost the game by more than a single score. The biggest loss coming an 8-point loss. So it's wildly impressive, guys. I mean, do we think this guy is a legitimate threat to getting more Super Bowl rings than Tom Brady? Brady at 6 right now, Mahomes at 1 looking for 2, taking on Brady in that Super Bowl.
I mean, not to be I'm not a huge fan of predicting, especially in a sport like this where, an offensive lineman can roll you up, you blow out an Achilles, and you're done, and you're never the same. I'm not a huge fan of predicting the number of titles. I mean, he certainly has the talent to do that, but to just put like a smart Alex spin on it, he could literally win every Super Bowl between now and when he retires, or he could never win one ever again. It's really hard in this league where longevity is an oxymoron. To kind of put that on him. So, yeah, he individually has the talent, but as we've been talking about all show, it's also about the team. It's about the supporting cast. We'll see how long this ride goes in KC and what happens after that. For now, he's got one Super Bowl in front of him to win, and that's something we'll be talking a lot about next week.
I mean, he definitely, I agree, he has the talent to get, 4 or 5 or even more, but the dude has to stay healthy to have a long career, and that's something that is tough for quarterbacks. I mean, you're on the field for 100% of the snaps, and there aren't many positions on a football team that are on the field for 100%. I mean, basically, it's the offensive line and the quarterback. Everybody else plays, 60, 70, maybe 80%, maybe, but you have to stay healthy, and especially in the NFL, yeah, you mentioned it may come down to some luck as well. Like, if you throw them like this and you get hit on the helmet and something happens to your hand, that could be a while, and you might not be the same after the injury.
Certainly think that, anything could happen. I don't disagree with what you guys are saying. Injuries are certainly a part of the game, but I'm going to have fun with this. It's a hypothetical question. I'm going to assume that he doesn't have a major injury, which, to be honest, I think is actually more likely that he, we see injuries, but more often than not, like, we see these guys have long careers, the guys that are talented, and I think Tom brought up the supporting cast. Well, I think he has the supporting cast. They've got Tyreek Hill, I believe, to 2 more years after this year, Travis Kelce for 4 more, and if I'm Hill or Kelce, I don't want to leave. I know that they may have to take a bit of a pay cut, but think about this. If they're paying with Patrick Mahomes, they're going to get the best numbers. They're in a passing offense with the best quarterback. They can't go elsewhere and get better numbers. They're actually perfect together because it's also harder to double team them because there's that really good guy, but also one is a receiver, one is a tight end, so sort of a little bit less jealousy aspect. That trio together is completely perfect, and they can also get more endorsement deals while they're playing for the Super Bowl team, the number 1 offense. They go elsewhere. They may not have the same sort of endorsement opportunities. I think for those 2 guys, it makes sense to take a little bit of a pay cut if they need to. So the fact that they have Mahomes for 10 more years and they have those guys for basically 2 or 4 more, they could win another 2 or 3 in the next 4 years, no problem. It's anything could happen in a game. We're not going to see the Chiefs win, 10 Super Bowls in a row. I'm not that naive. But you look at this team in the next 10 years, besides Kelce, Mahomes, and Hill, they've got these young running backs. Edwards-Helaire, we forget about Damian Williams, who arguably, you'll hear me say this, arguably deserved the MVP over Patrick Mahomes in last year's Super Bowl. He didn't even play on this Chiefs team. Mecole Hardman, very young guy who has shown moments of crazy talent that could only improve. So I think this team has the ability. I think Mahomes has a supporting cast. And if I'm Andy Reid, I'm going nowhere with those guys. Like, Andy Reid is not going to retire anytime soon because he has the ability to go on the pantheon of all-time greatest NFL coaches. No reason to retire with this team. So, yeah, I think Mahomes is going to get to 7 rings, maybe 8 even. I think he's going to know that number that Brady has, and I think in the modern-day game, with the advances in health, advances in medicine, we see these quarterbacks playing to a much longer age. Mm-hmm. And Mahomes is a fantastic passer. Because he eludes and, runs around and escapes pressure a lot, sometimes people try to think of him as sort of a runner, but he runs to throw. The only time he really runs to run is if he sees there's a wide open gap. He's actually pretty average speed-wise, maybe a little above average, but he's the guy who can also sit behind the pocket and destroy you. So as he loses some mobility later in his career, I don't think that's going to hurt his game that much just because he can Tom Brady you, he can Peyton Manning you, but then he can also Aaron Rodgers you or Russell Wilson you. He can do everything. So, yeah, I think Mahomes is going to win 7 Super Bowls at least. But when it comes to the Chiefs, and you can rebuttal that, Tom, have you guys seen a team that's ever sort of been able to turn it on when they need to? Because I think what's remarkable is they played all these close games this year, and people were like, oh, well, should we worry about the Chiefs? But this game, in a game they needed to deliver, they completely dominated this game.
Well, I don't think that they can, as the phrase goes, turn it on like a faucet or anything like that because if they could do that, why wouldn't they do that all the time? Why sweat out a game against Atlanta in Week 16? I think that they go through ups and downs. I think every player, every team does. And I think, you get a little extra juice from the playoffs, which is inherently not being able to turn it on whenever you want. That's being able to make it to the big moment, to show up and be your best when the time calls for it. So I don't think it's a matter of, can they turn it on anytime that they want to? Because if they could, why wouldn't they? So that's where I kind of land on it. Again, it's another semantical smart aleck answer to the question. I think they arrive at the big moment. They are clutch in the sense of the word that they are themselves in moments of pressure. That's what clutch is to me. And then choking obviously is shrinking away from that. I don't believe you can inherently magically get better in a pivotal moment. But they're clutch in the matter that they show up and they do their jobs the way that they're supposed to when it matters the most.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that, they can turn it on. I don't know if it's quite as easy as an on and off switch. I mean, you think back to some great offenses, the 2007 Patriots with Tom Brady, Randy Moss, the Broncos in 2013 with Peyton Manning, Demaryius Thomas, Wes Welker. I mean, Manning had like 55 touchdown passes that year. Those guys could really turn it on. But we've seen the Chiefs kind of be vulnerable, both games against the Raiders, for Pete's sake. They couldn't turn it on. And so, yeah, we'll see what happens. But this is a team that, has a very good offense. We know that. And kind of previewing the Super Bowl, it may come down to how well do the defenses play. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a very hard question because Tom brings up a point. Yeah, well, if you could turn it on at any point, why don't you? Yeah. But I think it's there's something to be said about like just losing like a half inch of focus. I think there's something to be said that part of it is it's hard to be consistent for any team ever. But I do think there's something to be said about it's human nature. We wish that weren't the case, but sometimes it is human nature to play down to your opponent. It's human nature to just have moments where you're quite not focused. Whereas when the game's on the line, you're 100% razor sharp focused. I mean, because if it simply came down to just a matter of not having those moments, I think we wouldn't have upsets. I mean, I think in any given week we have an idea of who should be the better team, but you look at a lot of these NFL games, 20 to 25% of the time, we're going to get a pretty big upset where we're looking at a point spread above 3 to 4 points where we have an upset. And part of that is, I mean, are you mentally there for the whole game? Can you mentally play a 60-minute game? And I think there are moments where every team in the league has those lapses, not just the Chiefs. But I think in terms of who turns it on more than anyone, I would say they do have that ability because they score so quickly when they need to. And we've seen it so many times. They get down in these games. I mean, there's statistics that Aaron Rodgers has a horrific record when down double-digit points. I can't remember what the stat was off the top of my head, but it's also, like, really, really bad. In addition, like, Lamar Jackson hadn't led a 10-point comeback prior to the game against the Titans. So it's not normal to be coming back down 10 points. Like, they did this every game in the playoffs last year. They were down 10 points and they came back. Even against the Bills, granted because of a fluke fumble, they got down 9-0 in this game, and you never felt like there was a chance they're going to lose the game. I think you look at the Peyton Manning Broncos Drew brought up. That was, I believe, the highest scoring offense of all time when it comes to points. I think maybe those guys were a little bit more focused. But you look at the Chiefs' offense, if you gave me one game and what offense do I trust most in like a Super Bowl scenario, I would say the Chiefs. So in that sense, I would say the Chiefs are able to flip the switch better than any team ever. I can't say that they always do it because they're human beings. They're never going to be perfect. But when the game's on the line, I'd say those are the guys that do it, specifically their offense. You brought up the Raider games. Actually, their offense was pretty good in those games. It was the defense that happened to let them down in those games. So, anywho, real quickly before we move on, what do we think about the Bills? We'll break down the Chiefs-Bucks Super Bowl all next week. Did this Bills team have a sort of magical season that we see every once in a while, or are these guys here to stay for good? Are they a team that we should expect to be seeing in the AFC Championship game for years to come, maybe the Super Bowl? What do we think? Where do we land on the Bills train?
Well, I certainly think the Bills can be here to stay. They're built that way because they have such a young nucleus, a young core to their team. This isn't one of these, older teams that, kind of pop together, flash once, and then fade away. But I think a lot of it is going to rely on Josh Allen's continued development. The league now has a full year of tape on him, and I'm presuming that we're going to have a resumption of pretty normal football activities. As we come out of the pandemic, hopefully, fingers crossed, over the summer, teams are going to be able to have more intensive training camps. Preseason, they're going to be able to study and work on that film a lot more. It'll be interesting to see if his development is able to continue. Something that we talked a little bit about earlier in the year. Prior to the season, Josh Allen was averaging somewhere in the mid-50s for a completion percentage, and then had a pretty big jump this year, in large part because of the acquisition of Stephon Diggs, but also a lot of work on Josh Allen's part. Can this be better than a one-off? Can this be actual sustained development that carries him forward? That'll go a long way to determining how serious of a contender the Bills are going forward over the next few years.
Yeah, I think the Bills are here to stay, and, they have that, you mentioned they're young, and, they have a lot of room to improve, and, look how far they made it, but they have that winning mentality in the locker room now under Doug McDermott. I mean, that'll carry over. Once you start that winning program and that winning mentality, it'll carry over, and, we'll see if the rest of the NFL figures out Josh Allen next year, but that guy's got, room to improve, and, he can open up into his bag of tricks and continue to learn.
Yeah, take a look at his numbers. Tom brought up the completion percentage, which was, around just over 50%. Then we had it way over 60% this last year. Well, he went from 10 to 20 to 40 touchdowns. Like, he's doubled his touchdowns every year. Certainly, we don't think he'll throw 80 next year, but he's really fixed his accuracy. We've always known he had the great arm, and he has the legs, too. He's truly a dual-threat quarterback in the NFL. Maybe as good as there is if we take into account that how much he beats you both ways. And the crazy thing is, I don't know that he's going to be this good every season, but actually their team outside of Josh Allen and Diggs, who, by the way, I don't know if you've seen all the stuff in the internet, and maybe it's just in the moment, but it seems like Diggs and Allen are really close, really good buddies. It seems like they've got a special connection that could work for years to come. But you look at this Bills team, as good as Josh Allen played, as good as Diggs played, as good as their passing game played, they were mediocre in the run game, and that's putting it nicely. Their defense actually was, again, pretty average if you look at the statistics. And when they went up against the great Kansas City team, they got obliterated. So this Bills team essentially, is not great on defense, is not great at running. They're a very good passing team. And that, by the way, was done intentionally. They traded away some defensive talent so they can get Diggs because they realize you win in the NFL by passing the ball. But you look at what they can do in the drafts to come, I would say their quarterback and their receiver pretty set in those positions. They can perhaps look for more defensive players, maybe an offensive lineman and a running back to help that running game. So, yeah, I think they're here for years to stay. I think a lot of people are looking for the Chiefs-Ravens to be that rivalry. Not to say that won't happen either, but I think the Bills, to me, are probably built to be the second-best team in the AFC over the Ravens for the next 5 years at least against Kansas City. But anywho,
I think that's pretty fair.
Speaking of young quarterbacks and teams, we've got a young quarterback in Deshaun Watson who's looking to get traded from the Texans. Deshaun Watson this last season, by the way, led the NFL in passing yards only because Patrick Mahomes didn't play Week 17. To be clear, Mahomes did have more yards per game, would have had more yards had he played Week 17. Of course, a lot of those stats by Watson, a little bit inflated because his teams were down, he was passing late. But nonetheless, he did lead the NFL in passing yards, and he didn't throw 30 interceptions like Jameis Winston did. So it was a legitimate, strong season for him, but his team struggled a lot, and he's now requested a trade. What do we think about this Deshaun Watson saga? I know we don't have insider information, but what perhaps is a place you think he'll land? What's a good landing spot for him? And is there any scenario where, if you're the Texans, you try to block this trade and sort of make him play for your team? Is that possible?
I mean, to start with, trying to make him play for the team, from what I, read and heard about the situation from some very good reporting across the league, it is the managers at the top of the franchise. It is the owner, Cal McNair. It is the not really general manager, not really team president. He's more like a chaplain type of guy. That's Jack Easterby, a fellow who certainly has risen to great heights with not necessarily a whole lot of stake to go with his sizzle. And that seems to be what's really rubbing Deshaun Watson the wrong way. He makes it clear that he wants out, and it's just such a difficult situation because he literally this season signed like a 5-year extension. That makes it really difficult to deal him. Makes it really difficult on him from a leverage standpoint to demand a trade, but he's doing it anyway. He's making it clear that he's not happy, and it's going to be tough to see where he goes because I think the NFL's put a limit on the number of draft picks you can trade. I think you can only trade 3 years out. So, it kind of comes down to who can put together a really, really appealing package for the Texans to look at. I think Miami probably can do the best job because they have the Texans pick from the Laramie Tunsil trade. So they can say, hey, we'll give you your number 3 overall pick back. And, they can also offer up a foundational piece in Tua Tagovailoa where we saw some flashes this year, but I know injury concerns are still kind of hovering around him, and he's not a proven commodity in the NFL. I think the Dolphins can put together the best overall package for Deshaun Watson. I think the Jets might be a second-place favorite in terms of just who can offer up the best assets, and we'll kind of see where it goes. It's going to be fascinating to watch, that's for sure.
Does he have a no-trade clause? I can't remember.
He does have a no-trade clause. Yeah, so he can mix a trade.
Because if I'm him, I don't see why I would go to the Dolphins and Jets. I don't think he has nearly good enough targets there, and I don't think that those are good enough teams to win. I think Miami maybe, but they have some work on the receiving side. The Jets, I just don't see why he would want to go there.
I mean, big New York market maybe, something along those lines.
That doesn't mean much these days, though. With the social
I'm aware.
And everything, the exposure to television, the market size thing isn't what it kind of used to be type deal.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with you, but I think that those are the two franchises that can offer, the best package of assets. And basically it'll come down to, hey, Deshaun, do you want to be here or do you want to go someplace else? And, Miami seems like it has a strong culture with Brian Flores as the head coach, and they have some pretty decent young talent. I know the receivers aren't as great, but, what is he working with in Houston for crying aloud? So that's why I think they're probably the best option. In a perfect world, if he could go to, say, Indianapolis, where he's surrounded by a great team, or San Francisco, where you have an outstanding head coach and, again, a really solid defense.
What about the Bears? Our Bears!
Why would he want to come to the Bears? The Bears are not quite.
The Bears and the Jets, though. Let's be real.
I'm from Chicago, so I would agree with you. I don't think that he does, especially when you consider that the Bears could have had Deshaun Watson years ago, and they didn't even really interview him or try him out for the position. There's probably still a little bit of resentment there. It's not out of the realm of possibilities from what I've heard.
No, that's a fair point.
But, also it's cold here, man. If you could pick, play in Miami or play in Chicago, Will Smith had it right. Bienvenido a Miami.
Yeah, he's coming from Houston. I doubt he's going to want to go to Chicago. But yeah, the whole Texans situation is rough for them. I mean, they really butchered this. The guy's full of talent, and you make him upset, and he has every right to be upset. I mean, it just wasn't good what the Texans did, and so I'm not sure where he'll go, but it'll be very, very interesting throughout this off season.
Yeah, I mean, I hope he goes to Chicago as a Bears fan. I just don't see him going to the Jets because he actually had pretty decent targets in Houston. I know they don't have per se a big name guy like they used to with Hopkins, but you look at Will Fuller and you look at Cooks, and they had someone else who got suspended. Again, I'm talking off the top of my head, who got suspended and missed some games.
That was Fuller. Fuller got suspended.
But he played for a little bit, I think, though, and then.
Yeah. And then at the end of the season, he got suspended and just killed my fantasy team.
Well, I had Brandon.
The way it goes.
Brandon Cooks as his other receiver who went off after I got eliminated from postseason contention. And
probably.
I didn't start him 1 week where he had a huge week. He was on my bench. Anywho, story of my fantasy season. It'll be interesting to see where he does end up. I'll give you a couple possible interesting spots. I think certainly they'd have to improve their receivers, but look for Bill Belichick to try and coax Deshaun Watson. I think certainly he knows it's a winning culture. I think if he were to go to New England, he would probably go there expecting sort of big returns on year 2 or 3. Because if you're Bill Belichick, you go in there and you tell him, hey, look, we'll try and get you a receiver in the draft, try and get you a receiver next year in free agency. I don't know that they have receivers right away to win, but certainly if they can build that in a couple years, I think their defense had a ton of guys hold out due to COVID. I think their defense is going to be fine. And if they get Deshaun Watson, their quarterback is fine, then all they really got to worry about is the receivers because their running game isn't too bad either. So that's an interesting possible spot. One other quarterback on the free agency market, as who knows where Drew just went, is Matthew Stafford. I think you look at Matthew Stafford, to me, I think he's certainly, Drew's back, there he is. Matthew Stafford is certainly, I'd argue, perhaps the most underrated quarterback in the National Football League. The last 10 years, I think he's top 5 in career passing yards per game. And I think some of his interception numbers, which aren't awful, I think they'd be even better if he played on a better team. Detroit is just a completely terrible franchise. They've had one playoff win in the last 30 years with Barry Sanders when he was a running back. They only won 1 game with him. And they had Stafford and Calvin Johnson, still couldn't win a game. And I don't even blame Matthew Stafford. So certainly Deshaun Watson is number 1 commodity because he's younger and he's even better. But I think Matthew Stafford could be a real steal for a team. If I'm the Bears, yeah, maybe Watson won't want to come there. But you look at Matthew Stafford, man, he played in the division. He's familiar. And then he can go and beat up the Lions as revenge games. I would be picking up the call for the Bears because looking at where they're drafting, they're probably going to get the 4th or 5th quarterback if they go quarterback route, which I think Matthew Stafford, to me, is better than the 4th or 5th quarterback option. I think he's only 32, and these days, like I said, quarterbacks play till they're 40. You can get 7 to 8 good years from him. I think he's better than Trubisky, and I think he's better than a late round first rounder just because he's proven that he's a good player. So I'm picking up the phone if I'm the Bears.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at Matt Stafford's game and you squint, you can kind of see, Patrick Mahomes before Patrick Mahomes. This is Patrick Mahomes if, unfortunately, he ended up in Detroit type of thing. With some of the throws that Matthew Stafford is able to make, I think that, the Bears could be a fit. I question whether Detroit would want to make that in-division trade. I see Indianapolis is probably the top option because they're picking in a similar spot to Chicago. They're outside of the conference, so the Lions aren't going to have to really deal with the consequences of trading away their franchise quarterback. And it's a much better situation for Matthew Stafford. It's a much more settled team, a much better defense, a much younger team. He's really a plug and play and an upgrade over Phillip Rivers. So we would actually see the Colts possibly making a really big jump in the AFC standings next year as well. So I think Indianapolis would be an outstanding landing spot for him to go.
Who's the backup for Stafford?
Who's the backup for Stafford? Well, technically,
who?
Oh, in Detroit, yeah.
Detroit is the backup.
Legend at the bank. The man's.
So they need a quarterback.
Oh yeah. Maybe they'll get Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah, why don't we? Yeah, you know what? Let's be honest, though. They're looking to deal Matthew Stafford. The Lions are known for picking bad, guys on offense. Maybe the Bears could trade Trubisky for Stafford. Trubisky's younger. Maybe they give a 4th-round pick, 2 or something. I would make that deal.
It's going to take a first. I know Detroit's put that out there publicly. That's
do a first if they're trading away a quarterback. I don't think the Bears are going to have to give away a first if they get Trubisky in the deal.
Well, Mitch Trubisky isn't going to be under contract at the end of the year, which I think is March whatever. He's not going to be under contract with the Bears anymore, so Detroit could just go out and sign him. They don't have to worry about a trade or anything like that. From what I've read, Detroit's saying it's going to take at least a first-round pick. I would imagine something like a first and a third, maybe a first and a fourth, somewhere in that range is what's going to get Stafford pried away out of Detroit.
You know how I feel about draft picks. They're not guarantees.
Oh, absolutely not.
Proven player, I would take a first-round pick. I mean, I'm not talking about first overall pick, but if you're a team anywhere in the, bottom half of the first round, anything, 17, 18 on down to 30th,
yeah.
I would give away that pick for Matthew Stafford, sure. Drew, any thoughts on Matthew Stafford over there? You keep switching locations on us. What's going on, man?
Internet issues. Do I have any thoughts on Matthew Stafford? I mean, well, we'll see. I mean, you're right. He is a proven player, but, and that guy's just been in a not-so-great organization for so long. Has he been on any other team?
No.
Mm-hmm.
No, so that's going to take some adjustment. I mean, the Lions organization is just brutal. I mean, that guy was on the 0-16 team, right?
No, I think that was right before they drafted him.
I want to say that the 0-16 team led to him getting drafted. Don't quote me on that, but I'm almost positive he was not on that team. Tom, you look like you might look this up, so you can.
I'm going to look that up, yeah, just to
confirm, do the journalism work for us. But I'm pretty sure Drew, he came after the 0-16 team. But that's the point is that's the type of situation that he came into.
Yes. Yes. So, I mean, any team would be lucky to have him.
Yeah,
but I'd rather have Deshaun Watson.
Yeah. I mean, I think Deshaun Watson is younger and a little bit better talent-wise, so certainly Watson is number one on the free agent market. But I think you look at Stafford's numbers and his success, I think he'd be probably even better somewhere else, assuming that he has, a decent supporting cast. I mean, he goes to the Jets. I don't know how much better he's going to be there. But he goes to a team like the Colts that Tom mentioned. That could be a win-win for both sides. Tom, what are you finding on the internet?
It was John Kitna was the starting quarterback for the Lions. And then when was Stafford drafted?
Was it
I think it was 2008 was the 0-16 season. He was drafted in 2009. So, yes, he was the direct product of that 0-16 team.
And that, to be honest, is one of the few good picks. I mean, I think the Lions, draft-wise, I think Matthew Stafford and Calvin Johnson are the only good draft picks I can think of in the last 20 years. I mean, show me a Joey Harrington. Show me you named that bust receiver. I can't even think of the names now, but they drafted so many bad receivers for so many years in a row.
Yeah.
So, anywho, more fun topic. We have the Super Bowl coming up next week. It's going to look a little different. No big Super Bowl media day. The Chiefs can't arrive in Tampa Bay until I think like 2 days before, and they might be arriving like on Saturday or something. But anywho, we'll do a whole Super Bowl preview. We'll have all sorts of prop stuff, all sorts of fun stuff next week. But now, this week, we're going to talk about Super Bowls past. So I was going to start with the games first, but let's start with something fun, guys. Do you have a favorite Super Bowl commercial that you've seen?
I do. It was a Doritos commercial, and it's the Doritos Crystal Ball. Do either of you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, gosh, I think so, yeah.
I don't know.
It's a commercial where it's a couple guys in an office, and guy says like, "Oh, it's my magic Doritos Crystal Ball," and it's just a snow globe. And the guy's like, "Really? Like, how does it work?" And the guy says, "Are there going to be free snacks today?" And he shakes it up, and then he turns and he pitches it at the vending machine, shatters the glass. Everybody's getting snacks. Later in the commercial, the same guy who asked, "Hey, how does this work?" has it. He says, "Am I going to get the big promotion?" Turns around, throws it, and it hits, presumably, his boss square in the crotch. I am completely juvenile when it comes to this sort of thing. Hitting the groin is always going to hit me in the funny bone, so that's why it's my favorite commercial. I still laugh at it all these years later.
Yeah, what year was that? I think I vaguely remember that.
I don't even remember. It's been around for a while. I can look up the exact year that it aired, but yeah, that's my favorite commercial. Not a whole lot of substance to it.
I've got a two-way tie for my favorite, of course. You know me. My first favorite that I lost my mind is, you guys remember Yao Ming, the tall NBA superstar out of China. And there's a commercial where this guy is saying like, "Yo, hello," and he's like, "Yo," and Yao's like, "Yao, yo, Yao," and he thinks he's talking to his name. That just gave me a good chuckle. And then I loved another one they had. We know Brett Favre, the legendary quarterback that played forever. And there's always it always seems like there's a rumor that Brett Favre is going to come back. I don't know if you guys remember that a couple of years ago. I mean, Brett Favre is like past Tom Brady age even, but people are always thinking Brett Favre will pull a comeback. Well, there was a Super Bowl commercial where it was Brett Favre in a wheelchair throwing a football, and it said something like 2035 Super Bowl MVP or something. I can't remember it. I should have looked it up. I meant to, but I forgot. But that one really is just hilarious, given how Brett Favre played for so long and loved the game, which was cool to see. Drew, do you have a favorite commercial?
Yeah, so I don't remember if it was the Super Bowl, but you remember the Bud Light commercial, and the guy was always going, "Yeah, Bullseye, Bullseye." You remember that one?
Yeah.
That's one of my favorites.
I think
that was years and years and years ago.
Yeah, that's a good one.
But the Budweiser commercials usually get me with the Clydesdales. That's always one to look forward to during the game.
Castleman might know this best, I feel like, of on our show, but I think it's like Pepsi and Budweiser and a few others, Coca-Cola. Don't quote me on that. Do not quote me on it. But a few of the big name companies are not doing Super Bowl commercials this year, and they're donating money to COVID. Did you guys hear that?
I had not heard that.
Budweiser, Coke, and Bud Light are some of the big ones that they aren't advertising. They're dedicating their money to COVID efforts.
Yeah. Do you guys have a favorite Super Bowl halftime show?
I mean, it has to be Prince in 2007, right? As far as most objective measures, that was the Bears Colts Super Bowl, I believe, in Miami, with the rain coming down as he's singing Purple Rain. That was long enough ago that I didn't really appreciate it in the moment, but certainly as I've gotten older, that's definitely risen up the ranks in terms of great halftime shows for sure.
Wow. Yeah, I'm not a big Prince guy. So when Tom Petty performed 10 plus years ago, I was a fan.
Yeah, I remember that one too. I remember when I think of Super Bowl halftime show, the first thing that pops to mind, and maybe it shouldn't.
I mean, Janet Jackson, sure, of course.
Maybe I'm being immature, but that's the first thing I think of. Maybe I shouldn't go into specifics, but you can Google that. The young generation that didn't find out what happened with Janet Jackson. That to me, maybe not for the right reasons, always sticks out to as the first halftime show that I think of when I hear Super Bowl halftime show. I thought a very underrated performance was a couple years ago, Katy Perry with All the Sharks. There was a lot of mixed opinions on that one. Personally, I was definitely a fan. I think U2 performed one year. I like the band U2. That was a good one. But overall, I'd say the Super Bowl tends to do very well with a halftime show. I think there's a lot of critics out there, but I personally tend to not be one of them in that area.
Yeah, yes, I'm looking forward to the weekend. I watch TV obviously, and there's that Pepsi commercial where it's playing his hit, and everybody's like singing it, and then he drives up, and yeah, you've seen it. So, but that's when I found out who The Weeknd was. So
there you go.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't know The Weeknd.
I'm familiar with the band, but I mean, I've heard some things.
Oh, it's just an individual.
There you go. That shows you how old I am.
Yeah, I thought it was a band too. Okay. Well, there you go.
Are they performing this year?
He's performing the Super Bowl halftime show. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
He's The Weeknd with only two E's. There's no E for the end part. It's week and then ND, all one word. The Weeknd.
Okay. I will do my research and I will find out more specifics.
We're gonna have props on what's his first song of the halftime show. It's narrowed down to two. So for me at least, so we'll see. Maybe there's some good value there.
I better study up on that. That could be some good luck for the week. By the way, Drew and I, and we'll get into this more next week, but we have a tradition where we pick the coin toss, and it's supposed to be 50-50, but I tend to lose almost every year. So
it is 50-50.
Well, it is 50-50.
Well, yeah, because you always bet tails never fails, and it always fails.
Yeah. So there was actually some stretch where it was like 7 years in a row, heads won or something. Again, don't quote me on that. Was not prepared for it. Look it up. But there's a lot of intrigue between the Super Bowl coin toss and what it ends up being. But getting to the game side of the Super Bowl, as Drew keeps popping in and out for us, guys.
Well, I'm turning my camera off. The internet is having some problems here in the Brackett household.
You don't look too bad, Drew. Keep it on. We want to see your face. Some people do, maybe. Maybe I don't, but you have the Mrs. Tiger hat on, so I give you props for that at least. Just don't pick them to win the NCAA tournament, only to lose in the first round. That was bad memories. But anywho, guys, game side of things, what's the first Super Bowl you guys remember watching?
Okay, so for me, it's kind of like a two-part answer because I have snippet memories of the Giants-Ravens Super Bowl in, 2001. Just like my grandparents had it on when we were over. But the next year was actually the first Super Bowl that I remember like making a big deal for. That was the Rams-Patriots Super Bowl 2002. And that was for like my family, we ordered in pizza. We went and, sat in front of the TV to watch the game. Growing up, we were a eat dinner at the kitchen or dining room table, not in front of a television type of family. So it definitely felt different, and that's why it's one of the more memorable ones. I remember saying, the Rams are going to win for sure, far, far, far before I knew what a point spread even was. The Rams, I believe, were favored by 14 that year going into the game. And that was also my introduction to Tom Brady and the barbecue and Patriots. So that's certainly a memorable one for me.
Yeah, Tom Brady, by the way, threw 145 pass yards in that game. So, the big six coming from Ty Law. I believe that was the biggest Super Bowl spread. It might have been passed up in recent years, but the Rams were a heavy underdog. That was the first football team who I really genuinely enjoyed watching play football. Certainly, I was a Bears fan, but the Greatest Show on Turf was something I got into. Also, obviously, I liked Peyton Manning. I was oddly a Brett Favre fan, despite being in Chicago. Nowadays, I'm not the biggest Brett Favre fan because of things that off the field, but that's another story in itself. The first Super Bowl I remember, actually, I think that this might be the very first NFL game I ever watched. The 99 Super Bowl, Rams-Titans. Was it 99 or 2000? Was the Super Bowl?
It was 1999. The date was 2000, but it was the 1999 season.
Right. So we had just moved from Bulgaria the year before. I didn't really watch much football. Maybe I'd seen a Bears game here and there. And that's kind of like the first game I remember watching where Mike Jones tackles Kevin Dyson on the 1-yard line. The Rams win the Super Bowl, and that's kind of when I became a Rams fan, because that was my other team besides the Bears, because I loved Kurt Warner. I learned about the story, how he was in the grocery store, the Arena Football League, and they brought him from the grocery store. He was the backup quarterback. Trent Green goes down. Warner leads them to the Super Bowl title. You had Marshall Faulk, Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt, like all those guys, very talented team. It's a shame they didn't win more than they did, but I first kind of fell in love with that team during the 99 Super Bowl. Funny, interesting connections I've had later on in life with that team. While I worked at Jonesboro, Arkansas, at the ABC station, Arkansas State, they had the coach come down as the speaker, Dick Vermeil. I tried his wine. If you guys are wondering what Dick Vermeil does now.
You sipped his glass of wine for him?
Well, no. He makes wine. He lives in Napa Valley, and he makes wine. And he's like, here, try my wine. And I'm like, well, I'm on the job.
You're not helping yourself. You're not helping yourself.
But then I was like, well, it's Dick Vermeil's wine, so I got to try it. I know we don't advertise on this show, but if you want to try some good wine, go for Dick Vermeil. So also, Mike Jones ended up coaching at Lincoln University. I covered his first football game there as head coach. He won the first, didn't win many after that. But a lot of fun asides with that Rams team. That's the first Super Bowl I truly remember watching. The first Super Bowl that I remember kind of having making a prediction, Tom, is actually the one you mentioned, the Giants-Ravens. And I remember this was fourth grade. We had something in our class where we had to pick the Super Bowl. And I was one of 4 people that picked the Ravens to win. And whoever got the closest got some kind of football and candy or something, just some sort of small prize that the teacher gave out. And I had the closest score in the class. And that's when I got into predicting games. And it was crazy because the Giants were
his first prediction was right.
The first, and I've had many right and also many wrong since then. But that's when I got really into picking games. I thought I had the first pick in the class, and I felt very good about myself back then.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't remember, the Broncos wins in the 90s. I have no recall on those. So the first one I remember is Super Bowl 34, Rams-Titans, and I remember we were at a Super Bowl party, and for some reason I had brought my school notebook with me. I guess, it's Sunday, right? So maybe have to do some homework. Who knows? I don't remember why I brought it. Yeah.
I was a nerd.
Well, I was, 8 years old. So, yeah, I liked schoolwork then. But, yeah, so I brought my school notebook, and all I remember is I bet this random guy at the party, didn't know him. He was an adult, obviously. I bet him my school notebook that the Rams would win the Super Bowl.
Oh.
And sure enough, they did. So I got to keep my school notebook, which sounds like a brutal bet. Maybe I should have lost that one. But, yeah, clearly I got into that early.
Did you win anything?
I don't remember. I just remember there was my notebook was on the line. I don't know. I was 8. Who knows, man?
You got to look for that notebook, man. That's a classic notebook. Really getting into some early bracket and Castleman life traditions. By the way, the Castleman
Tradition.
people, if Tom's mom is listening, does not surprise me that they're the Castleman dinner table gatherers, which is nothing wrong with it. I just picture.
Hey, I'm a table eater too. I'm a dinner table guy too, and I don't really have a dinner table. I have like an island, and it's rough. So whenever I go home, I'm like, oh, let's eat at the table. Let's eat at the table.
Yeah, I normally eat at the table too, but sometimes if I have to watch a game, I'll bring my food where I can watch the game. But anywho, a couple other random Super Bowl memories before we get into maybe some of our favorite and most memorable Super Bowls. My dad, you guys know this, but a lot of people don't know this, he's not a sports fan, like, whatsoever. Like, for as big of a nut as I am, it's crazy that my dad is not a sports fan, and he knows next to nothing about football. So I remember, like, the 2007 Super Bowl when the Patriots were undefeated and the Giants played them in the Super Bowl, and I asked him, Dad, who's going to win the Super Bowl? And he's like, well, I think it's going to be the New York Giants. And I'm like, no one's picking the New York Giants. And here's my dad picking the Giants to win the Super Bowl. Sure enough, he was right. So there goes that. He also,
I don't think anybody wanted the Giants to win that one outside of New York.
What?
I don't think anybody outside New York really wanted the Giants to win. I think a lot of people were kind of sick and tired of the 72 Dolphins having all the fun. And I know for me, certainly, I wanted to see a 19-0 season.
Well, maybe the Chiefs will do it at some point.
Yeah, Tom, I don't know about that. I remember I was at a Super Bowl party, and everybody wanted the Giants because they don't like the Patriots.
Really?
They didn't want to see the 19-0. I was the only one cheering for the Patriots at that time.
The Patriots have a lot of haters. I don't know. I would probably.
Of course. They won like 7 Super Bowls in a row.
Well, I was personally cheering for the Giants because I was a big Peyton Manning fan and the whole Manning-Brady rivalry, so I didn't want Brady to win too many Super Bowls, and he did anyways, but I was pulling for the Giants. That was not such a surprise, though, because people forget earlier that year the Giants actually played the Patriots very tough, only lost by like a field goal. Tom Brady's one Achilles heel is he's not great when he's pressured. That Giants team had Michael Strahan and all sorts of different pass rushers. So that
it was a pretty good team, yes, but you have to remember, the only reason they won was they scored with 35 seconds to go. It wasn't a convincing victory.
Well, they won by 3, but they won like 17-14. That Patriots offense, I think, at the time.
Oh, yeah, they shut them down. Absolutely. Yeah.
It was the highest scoring offense, I believe, in NFL history up until the Broncos surpassed them years later. So, the Giants won because they pressured Brady.
They got to Brady. Yeah.
Sack lunch, baby. A little sack lunch, Strahan style.
Was that the Tyree catch? The helmet catch?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was the helmet. That was one of the all-time legendary plays in Super Bowl history.
Yes.
So, that was a memorable Super Bowl. For me, a few Super Bowls that I remember, probably for me, when the Bears played the Colts, that was a very memorable Super Bowl for me as a Bears fan. But I was also Evan Hester takes the kick back the first play of the game. I went into the game thinking there's no chance the Bears win this game. Then Devin Hester returns it back, and I'm like, the Bears are going to win this game. And then sure enough, back to reality, they didn't. But that was an interesting Super Bowl for me. While I was definitely cheering on the Bears, in a way it was sort of a win-win because I loved Peyton Manning. He hadn't won a Super Bowl yet, so I wanted to see him win a Super Bowl. It was also the first Super Bowl of 2 black head coaches going up against each other, Tony Dungy and Lovie Smith. That was just a special Super Bowl because for me, those were the 2 teams I cheered for the most at the time. So it was kind of like a dream scenario. The team I wanted out of the NFC, the team I wanted out of the AFC. I certainly thought the Colts would win. I was pulling for the Bears, but that was a very good Super Bowl for me. Do you guys have a favorite Super Bowl or favorite Super Bowl memories, other stuff? What's the best Super Bowl you've watched?
it has. I don't know if I like so many of them, but I mean, the Falcons losing that 28-3 lead against New England has to be up there as one of the most compelling last, ends of a football game in Super Bowl history, because something that you kind of look at a historical perspective. We've been pretty blessed that most of the time the Super Bowl is a pretty competitive game, and it hasn't always been that way. So that was a game where it certainly looked like it was going to the Falcons' favor, and that was one where I'm pretty sure I was on board with the Falcons winning until the Patriots started to come back, and then it's just like, you know what? I kind of want to see them complete this. So it was just like a really, really compelling game on both sides. A little bit of a heel turn, if you will, to borrow some professional wrestling terminology for my rooting interest in the game. But that has to be up there as one of the more memorable ones.
Yeah, mine, I remember we were in college, and it was the Baltimore and the 49ers game. I remember Common was like, oh, yeah, 49ers, oh, yeah. But, yeah, sure enough, the power outage happens, the lights go out, and comes down. I think it came down to the final play where I think San Francisco had like a 4th and goal or something, and the Ravens brought the house, got to – I guess it was Kaepernick, and that was a heck of a game. But, of course, the 28-3 lead for Atlanta, just a brutal loss for them. And then the Philly special just a couple years ago was classic. The Patriots interception was a classic game. So, yeah, we've been really fortunate to have some really good games in recent history because you look at some of the scores back in the 90s, a lot of blowouts.
Yeah, I think – pretty much every Super Bowl has been good, minus the one like 2 years ago when it was the Rams-Patriots. I think maybe
that was
Drew and,
so good.
Yeah, Drew and Tom probably enjoyed that.
Yeah,
Super Bowl.
Yeah, that one was a great game. I mean, yeah, it was like that LSU-Alabama game. Just, that LSU-Alabama game was one of the most epic games I've ever watched. I mean, it just felt like, yes, we were in college. I don't know if you were over, but I just remember it was just so compelling because basically a first down would win you the game. Those guys weren't getting first downs at all, but the defense, the quality of the defense was just incredible. I mean, wow.
Thank you, NFL, for all the rule changes. Thank you, points.
If I could raise a point as to why I'm a little bit surprised, Kami, you didn't like that game more. You're one of the biggest soccer fans I know, where the entire time on the soccer pitch, you're trying for one goal to get you that lead, and there was one touchdown in the game. Why wasn't it compelling in that?
There was not a touchdown. Wasn't it all field goals?
No, I think it was one. It was like 13-6 was the final score.
Oh, I thought it was 9-6.
Wasn't it 13-3 or was it 16?
Oh, the Patriots game. The Patriots game. Got it.
Yeah, the Super Bowl game. Yeah.
Oh, yes, there was a touchdown.
Rex Burkhead was the only touchdown in the game, and it's
Tom, soccer is a different art. There's a different sort of skill, and there's something to be said about a spectacular goal from the 18-yard box compared to a 1-yard rush TD. It's just completely massive difference, different games. But, I mean, even in soccer, I do prefer to see high-scoring games. Mm-hmm. You guys know I'm a points guy. The only sport where I can go without points is perhaps baseball when we have a good old-fashioned pitcher's duel. But I tend to only like that if it's a lot of strikeouts. I don't like the ground outs. So give me like Roger Clemens, Pedro Martinez, as opposed to like Greg Maddux and I'm trying to like Tom Glavine or something. Like them going against each other. But anywho, for me, probably my favorite Super Bowl. I know you guys probably won't like this answer, but I've become a very big Chiefs fan. So for me, my favorite Super Bowl was last year, actually. Won the Super Bowl. I mean, if the Bears win the Super Bowl, that might be cooler. But if it's not the Bears, I thought the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl last year, coming down from 20-10, was pretty cool. In terms of strictly the best game, it definitely had to be that Falcons-Patriots comeback. I almost kind of agree with Tom Castleman in the sense that I was kind of pulling for the Falcons. But when they're about to blow that lead, I was like, yeah, it would be pretty cool for the Patriots to win. There was a guy that at the time, again, don't quote me on this, but I believe this was accurate. At the time, it was like the largest bet ever placed in Vegas. Like someone bet like $500,000 straight up on the Falcons to win, and the Falcons were the underdog. It was going to pay out to like over $1 million, and this poor guy had to go through that 28-3 comeback. Pity him. I do think also that Eagles-Patriots game was very good, high-scoring game, offensive game, just the way I like it, the Philly special, and it ended with the Patriots losing. And ironically, that was one of the very best games Tom Brady has ever played, but it ended on a Tom Brady turnover. So that was an interesting Super Bowl. By the way, one thing to consider, assuming Tom Brady loses the Super Bowl, which I think he will, he, by the way, will be 6-4 in Super Bowl history. LeBron James is 4-6 in the NBA Finals. That essentially separates one game between those two, and we've got Brady as the ultimate winner. LeBron is the ultimate loser in the clutch. So something to think about, by the way.
But again, you have much more influence. As the best player on a basketball court, you can literally take the ball and just make a scoring play by yourself. It's so much more difficult to do that in football.
I'm just saying the storylines that people want to put out there, it is sometimes remarkable what we see. But yeah, those were another real good Super Bowl, by the way, was the Panthers and Patriots. It was a high-scoring shootout. It started as like a 0-0 game. I think it went to like overtime. That was a good one. So a lot of good Super Bowls. Certainly next week, the whole Mahomes-Brady storyline has the potential to be one of the all-time greats. I definitely want a Chiefs win, but it would be cool if it was close. So a lot of things we're seeing, but Brady Mahomes isn't a big surprise. But we're kind of transitioning into college hoops, guys. Kind of a very interesting season we've got going in the COVID season. You've got Kentucky under 500, probably won't make the tournament. Duke is like 6-5, 4-3 in league play. UNC also not playing so well. It's like the first time since 1961, all three of them are not ranked in the top 25 at the same time. And then we've got a few other teams. Gonzaga's number 1, Baylor's number 2. We've got Iowa, who's been in the mix. Let me pull up my rankings here. They're number 6. Houston is number 5. Alabama's number 7. Texas Tech number 9. Texas is number 5. Our Mizzou Tigers are number 12. We'll slip after that Auburn embarrassment, certainly. But a lot of these teams who typically aren't the very best of college hoops, playing very well this season. And we got some of the blue blood programs. You know, UCLA also is not in the top 25. Kansas is all the way down to like the 15-20 range. I mean, what's going on? I mean, how much of this is the pandemic?
UCLA is ranked.
What?
UCLA is ranked.
UCLA is ranked now? Okay. Well, anywho, how much of this is the pandemic, guys?
I think a good portion of it has to be. I mean, coming into the season, we knew that Duke was going to be in for a little bit of a down year in the cycle. And as always, Coach Calipari at Kentucky is going heavy recruit, heavy freshman. That's just so much more difficult to pull off in a season where you don't have a regular sort of training camp and kind of ramp up to conference play. So, I think it's a combination of a little bit of down year on talent for these typical, top-end programs, combined with COVID complications, combined with games being shuffled about and canceled back and forth. And, we can even talk about, I have already talked a little bit about, kind of the ethical or unethical nature of the season and how it's gone. It's been a really stressful time, so it doesn't surprise me at all that some of these bigger programs that are a little bit down on talent and also down on opportunity to practice and really have the coaching come through. We're seeing more veteran squads like Baylor or Gonzaga come through and actually have good success because there's some continuity there.
Yeah, it's definitely, mostly due to COVID. I think you have a lot of these young teams like Kentucky and Duke, they're fairly young teams and they just haven't gotten the reps, and that's really important in the college game. And Right now, it's kind of got Gonzaga and Baylor, and who else wants to join them in the Final Four kind of deal. So obviously, that's a long way away. We'll see what happens, but I'm looking forward to March Madness, and should be an exciting time.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you can make a bet on this, if this bet is out there, and if it's not, they should put it out there, but I doubt it's out there, a sort of bet that you can make Gonzaga and Baylor versus the field, because I would take Gonzaga over Baylor versus the field personally. I think a lot of what you guys are saying does make sense. Some of these teams didn't have the same off seasons that they would have in the past, and sometimes, we've got practices and games getting canceled because of COVID, so it does make sense for some of these younger teams like Kentucky in particular struggling more. Kentucky also played a very tough non-conference schedule. We've actually seen them settle in a little bit in the SEC. They're not playing great, but they're playing, around 500 ball. In the non-conference, they lost almost all the games early on because, you've got a young team in a pandemic, and they're playing top 25 teams. But they still lost to a couple of rando teams, too, which was crazy. I will say this, though. While I agree with you guys about this whole pandemic thing, certainly Mizzou is a perfect example of that, a team that plays, almost entirely seniors and juniors. That's why we've seen the Tigers hit the top 25, but they're a team that struggles with consistency, so that's why I don't think they're going to win the SEC. But anywho, it's true, but I would say Gonzaga and Baylor, even if it weren't a pandemic season, I think these would be the two best teams, and part of it is experience, but this shouldn't be surprising. You look at last season at the end of the rankings, the Zags were ranked second in both polls, and you had Baylor ranked fourth or fifth, and both of these teams returned a lot of starters, and you look at Gonzaga, they have Jalen Suggs, who's been like their best recruit they've ever got. Like really finally Gonzaga getting some of these big-name recruits has been amazing with them at point guard, and they've got guys like Corey Kispert and Drew Timme, whose games have gone to the next step with more experience. So I think even if we did have kind of a normal season where we had Kentucky, UNC, Duke kind of having a chance for their freshmen to be in better shape, I still think we would be seeing Gonzaga and Baylor at the top of college basketball. I think some of these other teams, yes, they're maybe due to a pandemic like a Mizzou with experience or a Kentucky lack thereof. But I think no matter what, these Gonzaga particularly, I think, is really potential to be one of the all-time great college teams. I think certainly given the conference that they play in, I would bet on Gonzaga going undefeated the whole season and winning the whole thing. That's how good this team is. And that, to me, they could probably do in most basketball seasons anyways.
Absolutely, yeah. Certainly, a lot of talented teams heading forward to, March Madness is right around the corner. We're just a couple, was like 5-6 weeks away from Selection Sunday. Haven't, been paying 6 weeks away.
Maybe 7.
We're gonna have some really compelling college basketball to watch pretty shortly.
I am looking forward to it. We'll have some good March Madness picks on this show. It'll be great to see the brackets come out. Drew's bracket will certainly be busted. Drew's bracket buster. Those are my forecasts and my predictions. Certainly looking forward to it.
My forecast for your locks of the week are you're going to go 0-3. So.
Oh, okay. Well, locks of the week time. So we had a historic week in locks. For those regular listeners on this show may know that our locks of the week haven't always gone great. But this week, they certainly did. We had 2 historic things happen this week. It was the first time that all 3 of us had winning weeks. And for the first time, our very own last place Tom Castleman went 3-0. Congrats to Tom.
Haven't I gone 3-0? Wow. I feel like we've made a big deal about this before.
I don't think so. We made a big deal when you went 0-3. I don't think you've gone 3-0.
Every now and again, broken clock is right twice a day type of deal.
So, quick recap. So, I went 3-0. I had the Lakers +2 against the Bucks. Lakers winning 113-106. Chiefs -3 over the Bills. Chiefs winning by 14. Bucks plus 3.5 at the Packers. They won outright by 5. Castleman also had that same pick. So a lot of times when we go the same way, it tends to be wrong. That time it worked out. Tom also got Brady under 24.5 completions, and Singletary, the Bills running back, under 40.5 rush yards. That one didn't make sense that it was that high. So
that's why I took it. Good value.
Tom. Drew Brackett went back to the English Premier League FA Cup under 2.5 goals. It was a 1-0 game between Arsenal and Southampton. Newcastle United, Aston Villa under 2.5. Drew said Aston Villa would win 2-0. That's exactly what happened. Great forecast work there. And the only game that Drew missed was he did have the Bills covering against the Chiefs. So he missed that one badly. On the season, I am 2 games ahead of Drew, right around that 500 mark. Almost there. We're getting there. So I was over 500 most of the year, hit my bad stretch. I think I'm hitting my hot stretch again. Guys, what do we have this week? Let's start with Drew's locks of the week.
Yeah, well, we're going to go to the EPL, the English Premier League, on Saturday. Crystal Palace and the Wolves take the under 2 goals in that contest. And then Saturday morning, La Liga, Common's favorite league, Eibar and Sevilla, under 2 goals in that one as well. And then whatever, Eibar, same thing.
He's picking it. He doesn't even know.
Just hammered the under 2 goals in that contest. And then I'm going to go to the NHL on Saturday night. Nashville Predators and the Tampa Bay Lightning go over 6.5 goals. That's there's been a lot of scoring here early in the NHL. Take the over in that one, 6.5. It'll go to 7 or 8.
I will take under 6.5 total players, in that game. I'll probably take.
I will take well under 6.5.
What?
Is Steven Stamkos still playing?
I think so. That would have been my first guess that I would have given.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I know another one. Yeah, I can't do it. No, I don't know. Pekka, the goalie?
Yeah, was it?
Nashville's goalie, right?
Rena?
Anyone?
I don't know.
Rena, yeah, something like that. Okay.
Who knows?
1.5.
Who knows?
All right.
This is the first
Go
time
ahead,
I've been
Tom.
talking on the show this year, so there you have it.
Oh, yeah, I mean, well, the NFL is ending, so, we're going to have to go to the soccer and the NHL and, maybe NBA. I don't know. We'll see once tennis starts back up. Once we get a major going, that's when it gets fun. I know I bet tennis a few weeks ago, maybe 12 weeks ago on this show, and it did not go well.
It did not go well. No, it didn't. So we'll see how that goes. I'm going to actually start with La Liga. I'm going to go to the same game that you picked, but I'm going.
Oh!
I'm not going over. I'm going winner. Sevilla and Eibar. Sevilla's 4th in La Liga. Eibar's 15th. I know it's a road game for Sevilla. I know they haven't scored a lot of goals, so perhaps your under might hit. But I like Sevilla. They're minus 0.5 or plus 105 for a Sevilla win. So you're getting pretty much a little better than even money for a team who's trying to get in the Champions League in a much better position than Eibar. I think it could be a 1-0 win. I certainly don't think Eibar will tie that game or win that game. So if Sevilla wins 1-0, we can both be right. How does that work, Drew? That sounds good to me.
Love it.
I'm going to hit the NBA today. I'm going to start with the Blazers plus 5 at the Rockets.
Game has started.
The game started? Okay, well, I don't know the score, but I'm hoping the Blazers are looking good.
They're up 32-17 at the end of the first.
They're okay. Well, good. I didn't even know the score. I swear. Drew can attest to that I did in fact predict this pick earlier in the day.
He did.
So I think the Rockets have kind of been overachieving since Harden left. I think those guys are happy to have more shots, but I think eventually they're going to go back to reality. The Blazers, meanwhile, underachieving. I know Tom Castleman's a big Blazers fan. They haven't really lived up to his high expectations, but I think
they're fifth in the West.
Well, they're like 9 and 7. But anywho, safe cover with 5 points. If you're listening to this, the game might already be over, but you know that I picked it right. Another NBA game tonight. I have Heat -5 over the Clippers. Has that one started yet, Drew?
That one's tipping off in 2 minutes.
Okay, good. So we are giving in progress.
What was the pick?
Heat -5 over the Clippers. No Kawhi Leonard, no Paul George in this game. I can't stand this garbage that the Clippers pull. They need to play their guys more. I'll have more on that in my statement of the week, but I think Miami still a little bit banged up, but I think this Miami team does get rolling tonight and picks up the win there. Back-to-back 3-0 weeks coming for me and maybe for Castleman. What do you got this year?
We'll see if Castleman picks games that have gone final or are in progress.
Let's see.
Well, I'm going to go Clippers +2 against the Magic in their game tomorrow night, so no time conflicts there. And then for the first time, I'm going to go for a little bit of a Drew bracket special with a twist. I'm going to the EPL for these next 2 games. On Sunday, give me West Ham +0.5 over Liverpool. And then on Saturday, we have Man City, the best team in the EPL, taking on Sheffield, the worst team. Give me over 3 goals on that game. So I'm going for the number of goals, but I'm going over instead of under like Drew likes to do.
Oh, I love it. Let's go,
wow.
Man City. You're feeling a big game from Kevin De Bruyne, Sergio Aguero, Pep Guardiola will coach him up. You're feeling good about it, Captain.
I'm feeling great about all those guys who I'm just learning about right now.
I'm very glad you did not take Sheffield +2 or 3, whatever it is. I'm glad you avoided the line and went for the over-under, the total.
Yeah. Interesting. So the West Ham is what was your other one? So Liverpool, and what was it?
It was West Ham +0.5 over Liverpool.
So you're looking for a West
Sunday.
Ham tie or win.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that's interesting because Liverpool have struggled mightily the last few weeks. Liverpool,
yes, that is very interesting.
certainly on paper, Liverpool is significantly better than West Ham and should win outright, no problem. Given what we've seen the last few weeks, though, this might be good timing, or it could be the opposite effect in that the team finally gets going because they're due because of their cold stretch. We'll see. Tom Castleman,
very possible.
EPL debut.
Yeah, I mean, it's Tom's luck of the week, so you got to believe that they're going to win 4-0.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a chance that I get GameStop squeezed here. So we'll see.
I think so. Maybe I'll have to fade your pick and bet Drew on that, but you may not want to do it since I'm fading you. We'll see. We'll see what we'll do there.
The other versions of Lock of the Week. So that it'll be interesting to see how that all turns out, shifting over now to Statements of the Week and perhaps even some salutes. I'll get started with a big one in baseball. A salute to Hank Aaron, the home run king in my mind. I made a statement a few shows back about changing franchise mascots for teams with imagery that appropriates from indigenous American culture. And it's pretty simple in this one. You can make the Braves the Hammers. You don't even have to do that much of a logo change, and you're honoring, arguably the greatest, if not one of the top 5 greatest baseball players to ever do it. A quick story about Hank Aaron and a connection to my family. It's not even really that much of a connection. My grandpa, big baseball fan, was watching the game. Hank Aaron was up to play. I can't remember if he was about to hit home run number 714 to tie Babe Ruth or home run 715 to pass Babe Ruth, but my grandfather was intent on watching the game. My grandma said, John, you need to go to the store. I need this from the store. And he was like, no, hang on, wait for the game. She's like, we have people coming over. So he left, and as he was coming back in, Hank Aaron hits the home run, but my grandpa's getting in through the door, and he was so irate, and he was yelling and throwing a fit that he missed the replay too. And this is in an era where replay wasn't really a big thing. So that's a little, funny anecdotal story about Hank Aaron, but certainly a man who put up with so much. And you look at, kind of like the numbers obviously speak for themselves, but when you also contextualize that with a lot of the hatred that he had to put up with, a lot of the bigotry he had to put up with as people, how dare you try to break, the great Bambino, Babe Ruth's record. Certainly outstanding what he did and a great ambassador for the game. So that's my salute. And then hopefully keeping it. Oh, go for it.
I'm going to salute your grandpa for being a good husband. I mean, are you kidding me? I'll be honest. My goal is if I one day get married, I want to be a great husband. But if there's a chance for sports history, I'll be honest. I'm not sure if I'm going to the grocery store. That's off to your grandpa for being a good husband. You got to earn some brownie points for that. That's a big deal.
I don't know if my grandma would see it the same way. It's probably if you just done it from the beginning when you were supposed to do it, we wouldn't be in this problem right now. But it's also a testament that when something not great happens to you, don't dwell on the negative. Look for the positive, because you might catch the silver lining there, and something you certainly missed there. To jump into my statement of the week. All the NFL head coaching vacancies are now filled, and there are two prominent coordinators who have been left outside the circle, and they both happen to be coordinating offenses in the Super Bowl this week. Eric Bieniemy of the Kansas City Chiefs and Byron Leftwich of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, both of them credited with helping design the offenses. Byron Leftwich is a play caller for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What's kind of gone into this is we've seen a lot of hires made around the NFL of non-minority coaching candidates who don't have nearly as much experience or nearly the size resume that these two candidates do. There's a pretty simple solution to this, and it doesn't have to revolve around giving draft assets to teams that hire minority coaching candidates. It's simply don't allow any personnel transactions to happen until after the season takes place. We see this year after year where highly qualified candidates don't get the best head coaching opportunities because they're not allowed to interview for head coaching vacancies while their teams are still in the playoffs. The NFL is a great opportunity here to kind of extend their calendar yet again. We know how they want to have an event happening in each month. Have a coaching free agency type of period start after the Super Bowl's over. Then have all coaches be able to available to interview for positions. This ensures that the best candidates get in front of all the teams, that the best candidates are able to compete for the best vacancies that are available, as opposed to NFL teams trying to jump on the best candidate as soon as they can in order to get a head start on the next season. So that's a solution I'm proposing, because it's absolutely absurd that these two highly qualified minority coaching candidates have not received a head coaching gig as of yet.
Interesting to point out that I believe I heard that all four, like the Buccaneers have four coaches on their staff, like their main position coaches are all African American on the whole Buccaneers staff, making it to the Super Bowl. They also have some women coaches as well, I believe. What'd you say? They also have some women coaches on their staff as well. Yeah, so salute to the Buccaneers. I may not like Tom Brady, but I like what the organization is doing overall. I'll say this. I don't know, so again, don't quote me on this. I wasn't prepared, but I believe this season they have allowed some virtual interviews. I think Eric Bieniemy, the Chiefs offensive coordinator, did do a virtual interview recently, and he's done several of those. But certainly it's not the same effect. I certainly agree with you because this isn't like college football. College football, we obsess with getting the coach in terms of recruiting class. We don't have the NFL draft until April, I believe. So there's, I think, certainly enough time for a coach to kind of set his foundation and to, get in for off season and, figure out what he wants to do with the draft in terms of helping out the GM. So I 100% agree with you in this case. I guess we may. Drew Brackett, are you ready, or should we wait?
Oh, yeah. Oh, sure.
Where is Drew? Where's Waldo? Where's Drew Brackett? He keeps moving. Drew, what do you have for your statement of the week?
Well, for the first time since 1960, no player was elected into the Baseball Hall of Fame. I really am not a fan of how this process works. I mean, you have guys who I think that should be in that are being left out. Barry Bonds, Curt Schilling. I know they've had some off-the-field issues, and I know the steroids era was around there with Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, but man, I mean, Barry Bonds is the home run king. I mean, he hit the most home runs in Major League Baseball history. He should be in the Hall of Fame, absolutely. I know that, the steroids, it was a thing, but everybody was doing that at that time. That's more of a failure of the entirety of the league not policing it correctly. It's not their fault. I mean, they felt pressured to do it because everybody else was doing it, and honestly, it was very entertaining.
I'm drinking because everyone else did it. I was pressured to do it.
Well, it honestly was very entertaining. I mean, I still remember watching Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa. That was appointment TV in September, August and September, when they were going back and forth with each other, hitting home runs. That was awesome. Baseball doesn't have that. That's why I've lost my interest in baseball. Mike Trout, he's a big-name player, but not many people know him. So baseball needs something to kind of get it going again. And not saying that, we should have steroids or anything like that, but that was a tangent. I've gotten lost myself in that. But essentially, I'm not a fan of the Baseball Hall of Fame and how the process is for that. And yeah, I know Tom has some words as well on this.
So to clarify,
before Tom interrupts.
Yes, before I interrupt, to clarify, and again, I'm very conflicted on this. I want to hear Tom's thoughts first. But to clarify, Drew does believe a steroid user could be in the Hall of Fame. Tom, do you agree with this?
I absolutely agree, and there's a number of reasons why. And to be perfectly honest, to be fully upfront, I have done a 180 turn on this issue. Was steroids cheating? Absolutely. But also so are amphetamines. That was an era in baseball history, around Willie Mays' time, around Babe Ruth's time. They weren't competing against all the best players because baseball was a segregated sport. There are a lot of black eyes across a lot of different eras of the game. I think that it's perfectly fair to have, members of the 1919 White Sox team that gambled, that threw the World Series essentially. Pete Rose gambling on baseball when he had the ability to affect it. I think that's a pretty clear-cut line. But in terms of, some of the substances that are used either to, make you more muscular, make you more powerful, make you better able to hit home runs, or in the case of amphetamines, gives you more energy, allows you to be more available to play a 162-game season, or it wasn't 162 all the way back then, but still to play a significant number of games. Every era has some sort of blemish to it, and it kind of comes down to, what is the Baseball Hall of Fame? To me, it's a museum. To me, it tells the story of baseball, and you can't tell the story of baseball without steroids. You can't tell the story of baseball without Barry Bonds, with the summer of '98, Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa. So I think that it's also a flawed process, you mentioned, where it's basically a small cloistered group of, baseball writers, and not even all the voters still write on baseball, but people like, say, Vin Scully doesn't have a Hall of Fame vote because he didn't write for baseball, but he's arguably the greatest storyteller in the game's history. So it's just a very select group of people trying to select another very select group of people and inflicting some sort of moral standard to it. I think it's a bit hypocritical, and I think, they should absolutely be in the Hall of Fame for their on-field achievements. You don't have to agree with everything, but, there are racists in the Hall of Fame. There are anti-Semites in the Hall of Fame. There are people who, beat women in the Hall of Fame. Why are we making steroid use and performance-enhancing drugs the line?
Yeah, and it's really a popularity contest is what it is. I mean,
Absolutely.
Some of these writers, I don't know why they're picking who they're picking, but it's like, come on. So if these writers are treating it as a joke, I mean, somebody had LaTroy Hawkins in there.
Mm-hmm.
Wait,
former Chicago Cub, baby.
I couldn't even. I thought he was on the Rockies. I don't even know. Like
He probably was. He was on a lot
He
of
was
teams.
at one point.
The Twins also.
Yeah, and not to call him out. I mean, he was a fine player and all that. But
Boy, if you're listening, we're sorry for Drew.
goodness gracious, I mean, I don't know. It's just such a flawed process that I can't even. I don't even have the words for it. I guess I agree completely with Tom. It's a museum, and there was a steroid era. You have to acknowledge that if you're Major League Baseball. Like, it happened. We didn't do anything about it. Bud Selig or whoever the commissioner was.
He
We
was.
didn't do anything about it. But and I think why? I mean, they were making good money off of it. You had a guy who was going after the home run all-time record. I mean, come on, that'll give you ratings.
And really quickly, comment before I let you jump in. Bud Selig is in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, you stole.
Just saying.
You stole what I was about to say, by the way.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you stole it, you thief, Castleman, thief and Tom. So Bud Selig is in the Hall of Fame while he was, at the head of baseball during all this. I would like to say there's several lines here. I'm kind of, oddly enough, we rarely all agree. I'm kind of in a very similar boat as Tom Castleman, but I do have lines I draw. So for me, first off, when it comes to the gambling, and correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I believe, Pete Rose never bet against his team. What he had done is he bet on his team. So it would be a different story if he was trying to throw a game. So I think Pete Rose deserves to be in, certainly in the Hall of Fame. I actually would argue that he is more deserving than actually the steroid users because he had a Hall of Fame playing career. We're looking at what he did as a manager. So I don't believe he was betting as a player. Again, maybe he was, but he would have not that much of an influence anyways because he's always trying to get a hit. So I would say Pete Rose, to me, is even more of a slam dunk than the steroid guys personally. And even the Black Sox guys, if they had the numbers, they had the numbers. Where I draw the line with the steroid, where I find it so conflicting to me, I look at it like, would this guy be a Hall of Fame player without the steroids? And some
you don't know. You don't know.
Like
Barry Bonds was a great player before he started using steroids. He was a Gold Glove outfielder, multiple Gold Gloves. Go ahead.
Right. That's my point. I look at a guy like Barry Bonds. To me, Barry Bonds is definitely a Hall of Famer with or without the steroids. Where I struggle a little bit is like a Sammy Sosa or a Mark McGwire, where they're more so power hitters. They're not necessarily as big on average, stolen bases, defense type guys. I do think this for sure. Steroids don't fix your hand-eye coordination. So certainly those guys have phenomenal hand-eye coordination, and steroids can't be the only reason for them hitting all those home runs. There are many factors. Just for me personally, I tend to agree with you guys. I don't agree with the notion of Drew that you had to do it because everyone was. I think there was a lot of guys that did it, a lot of guys that didn't. I don't think you had to, but there are a lot of guys in that era that did it, so I tend to lean towards putting guys of that era in if their numbers stack up, but I also have to be cognizant of the fact of looking a guy like Mark McGwire or Sammy Sosa, would he be good enough to make the Hall of Fame without the steroids? Maybe, maybe not. Again, McGwire had a lot of home runs early in his career. Was he using them? Was he not? Hard to say. All of that is very complicated. Barry Bonds, though, specifically, to me, does deserve to get in because you can make a case for him arguably having the best baseball resume of all time. I mean, he is the home run king after all. He played great defense. He stole bases. He hit for average. He was the most feared player in the game. He had the on-base percentage. I mean, like, it would be the equivalent of hearing that, like, and it's a different sport, but like Michael Jordan used some sort of drug. Like, I mean, Michael Jordan's the best there was. LeBron James is in that discussion now, but yeah, I mean, it's very complicated. Overall, I tend to agree with you guys. Certainly don't really like the way the writers do things, even pre the steroid. The Baseball Hall of Fame has always kind of had like a weird thing to it, and it's kind of a popularity contest because it took forever for a unanimous player in Griffey. I think we had Mariano Rivera after that. And those guys are obviously all-time greats, but there were other players who have been equally deserving. I mean, you look at Hank Aaron, Babe Ruth. I mean, how are those guys not unanimous, Hall of Fame decisions, beyond me? My statement of the week, go ahead, Tom. You want to say something?
I was just going to say Ken Griffey wasn't unanimous. It was literally Mariano Rivera. A flipping closer is the first unanimous Hall of Famer over the course of all of it. Yeah, so
by like one vote, though. But still,
yeah, he's 99.3%. Again, asinine. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a popularity contest because they love Rivera. I mean, I guess the writers got to have their guy that they love. I mean, I know it's different positions, different eras. I certainly think you would, outside of maybe his family or, diehard Rivera fans, I think you would be hard-pressed to find someone that told you Mariano Rivera is the greatest baseball player of all time. I don't think anyone is claiming that. Maybe his kids or his wife, if he has them. I think he does. I can't remember. But anywho, moving on, my statement of the week is I'm tired of this load management garbage. Like tonight, the Clippers are resting Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. Like, it just doesn't work. And that's why I cheer against the Clippers. That's what they did last year, and it hurt their team chemistry. It doesn't work. I mean, I know the Raptors won with Kawhi Leonard a couple years ago where he rested. But again, I think they were fortunate the Warriors had injuries. And I think the Raptors won because they had a lot of really good players and, injuries hit. Just to point it out, Michael Jordan, by the way, in 4 of his 6 NBA championships, played all 82 games. He had 80 and 78 the other 2 seasons. So over the course of 6 NBA championships, the guy missed 6 games. So you don't have to play. And it's crazy to think about because we've got, like we talk about this all the time, guys play to a longer age. We've got all this nutrition, all these workouts, all this stuff. Like, guys don't have to do this. I mean, if you're hurt, you're hurt. But you don't have to load manage. I'm going to give out a shout-out to LeBron James, by the way. So shout-out, salute. LeBron James has played every game this season. How has he gone about, being a little bit more rested? Well, he's averaging a career-low 33 minutes. He's not obsessed with just getting his point-per-game averages up and playing those big minutes and sitting games. LeBron James played every game this season. It's not a coincidence. The Lakers have a new team. LeBron realizes the importance of establishing chemistry, especially in a season like this with all the COVID things. LeBron James, by the way, shooting 41.1% from 3 this year. The best three-point percentage of his career. 40.6 was the previous best. LeBron James is out there playing. He's taking a few more threes. He's getting his rests when he needs to. He's going about it the right way without killing your body but still playing the game. And it's scary to think about because if LeBron James is shooting over 40% from 3, come the NBA Finals, and I know that might flip a little bit, but if he's near 40%, whoo, forget the Nets 3 super team or whatever. Like, lock in the Lakers, man. Those guys are going to win. Lock in LeBron. Kudos to him for having played every game and not giving in to this whole NBA I'm going to rest thing.
Yeah, because didn't Greg Popovich kind of start that with the Spurs? But that was because, like, Tim Duncan
with Timmy and Tony Parker, Manu. Yeah, he started it.
I don't like that he did that.
Like it made sense because it's like, well, these are all guys that are, like, really, really old. And, they
Kawhi
can't
Leonard and Paul George aren't that old.
No, I'm agreeing with you, but it's just interesting how it started as, a perfectly reasonable, strategic thing of, okay, I'm going to save Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker for the playoffs when I really need them fresh. And then, all these other players are like, well, hey, we can kind of do that too. And that's kind of where the NBA has ended up now. I mean, it's a grueling schedule, no doubt. Like, there's a reason why they have a rookie wall in basketball more so than any other sport, because there's such a big jump going from college to pro. But I mean, yeah, these guys are able to, like, LeBron spends, I think, like $1 million per year on his health and wellness. Like, these guys could do that and play every game. I agree with you.
And part of the Spurs thing is that, again, those guys were guys who've played together for so many years. I don't like the Clippers doing it is because Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are in year 2 together. And they've had some roster overhaul. Granted, Tyronn Lue was their assistant coach, but it's not the same head coach you had last year.
For sure.
You've got a few new players. I just don't think it's a very good strategy. By the way, why I picked the Heat to cover in that game tonight that's ongoing right now. Who knows what the score is?
Yeah, we'll see how Common's locks are, since they'll probably be final by the time we're done with the show here in a minute.
I love it. Drew, what do you think about
the Rockets have taken the lead?
What do you think about load management before we go here?
I mean, it's tough because it definitely devalues the regular season. And, I mean, I think we've been saying that the regular season in the NBA doesn't matter for all, 30 teams, 32 teams, 30 teams. It just doesn't.
Diehard fans like me.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter for, the Lakers, the Clippers, all the teams that are probably going to get in by year's end. Like, it really just doesn't matter.
I think it matters in the sense that that's just how you have dysfunction in the team. I think part of the problem...
just because they're not playing in a game doesn't mean they're not practicing, per se. Well, you don't know what...
You don't get the same type of chemistry as you see in the
game.
I
know.
We talk about this all the time. Like, we use the Nets as a prime example. Well, let them get used to each other this year. Maybe things will be better in year 2. The Clippers aren't letting Kawhi Leonard and Paul George get used to each other. I think every rep helps, and they've got new players around them, and you had players within the organization complaining that Leonard and Paul George were getting preferential treatment. That certainly hurt the locker room. I would argue with you to an extent that it probably hurt their stamina and their fitness, just because you saw how the Clippers, you'd say resting guys is helping, but they blew so many leads. They blew double-digit leads every game against the Nuggets when they're up 3-1. Maybe it's those guys not, being fit enough or ready enough to go out there and play in the big games.
What leverage does the team have? What can they tell Kawhi? Hey, man, we want you to play every game.
Well, what about you and your job? I'm sure every once in a while, like every human being, you would like a day off work. Your boss says you have to work. You have to work.
Sure, you're right, but
they're getting millions of dollars to play a game that's a great game. They're going to sit. I get it. If you're injured, you're injured. But
these are the superstars. The superstars are the load managers. The superstars are the load managers. It's not, J.J. Redick sitting. It's Kawhi Leonard, Paul George.
A very bad year this year, which is crazy. But I'll tell you this, though. Your superstar is the one who should set the tempo for your team as a whole.
I'm not justifying it. I'm just saying this is kind of why it's happening. Like, the team doesn't have any leverage. Kawhi's a superstar. He's getting paid millions upon millions of dollars, and he's like, hey, man, I think I'm going to be better if I sit out a few games a week. Not really, but, a game a week, whatever. What are you going to say to that if you're the coach or the GM? What do you say?
Well, and that's the interesting thing, the shift we've seen.
You don't want to make Kawhi upset.
Well,
he's your superstar.
With guys now changing teams, requesting trades, that we've seen that the players, in a sense, now kind of run sports much more so than the coaches or general managers do these days. I just think,
and which is very interesting, right? Because just think, the owners and the GMs and the coaches are usually those who, I'm not going to say they've been entitled their whole life, but they're in a very successful position with great power, and they're used to being in control of everything. And now it's completely shifted where all the players have this control, and, these guys who are used to control, they don't know how to deal with it, right? I mean, I'm not saying you know what I'm saying. Like, it's quite the adjustment for them.
I think it's a generational thing, though. You look at our generation, not to get too philosophical, but our generation is more likely to stand up for themselves and, want proper work conditions. That's why we're seeing, all these protests and social justice issues, because people think that they should get what's earned. And usually that stuff is good things, but I think there's a time and place where some of this stuff gets misplaced. I'm not saying the owners or GMs or coaches, there's really not that much they can do, to be honest.
No, we're down in the rabbit hole now. I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying.
The final thing I'll say before we go here, though, is I'll say this. I would like the players to be accountable themselves as leaders and as men to go out there and do their job. So, Kawhi Leonard, if you're listening, I got 3 words for you. Do your job. Do your job.
Wow.
Combination channeling his inner Tom Thibodeau. I like it.
Exactly.
We can end on that.
We'll end on that. That does it for Salute Your Sports. We'll be back next week where we'll talk Super Bowl.